So where did the Engineering Change Lab come from? So it all started with conversations back in the summer of 2014. And the conversations were between the senior leadership of Engineers Without Borders and Engineers Canada. And both organizations have been partnering together for quite a while to do basic projects and initiatives and work to help promote and enhance the engineering profession. And so a lot of good progress had been made, but the leaders from these organizations were sort of still feeling like something was missing. And the beliefs that launched the lab are sort of encapsulated on this slide here. That both organizations were realizing that they shared a belief that although the engineering profession in Canada has contributed a huge amount in the past to society broadly, they both believed that there was still a significant further potential to be unlocked. And furthermore, there was a belief that there was an urgency and importance to unlock this higher potential in a changing world. And finally, that there was something missing, that although there were a lot of great initiatives already going on within the engineering profession in Canada, that if we really kind of want to get to this full higher potential, that we needed to actually add something else to the mix. And that's where this idea of an engineering change lab came about. And so from the conversations in the summer of 2014 came a decision to hold a launch event. And the invitations went out in the fall of 2014, and the launch event was in January of 2015 in Montreal. And in that launch event, we brought together 40 leaders representing 40 organizations from across the engineering community in Canada. So regulators, universities, different types of workplaces, civil society. As best as possible, we convened a microcosm of the engineering community in Canada to basically based on these beliefs, to start to explore what is that higher potential and how can we unlock it. And we decided to employ the lab approach, and we engaged support and consulting in order to use the social lab approach, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. So at that very first workshop, we made a very conscious decision not to have any one organization or one leader start to presuppose what this higher potential of the engineering community is. Instead, right at that very first 2-day workshop in Montreal, we started asking the questions of the group. Why is it urgent and important to unlock the higher potential of the engineering community? What is holding back that potential? And so this is actually output from the very first workshop, some of the wisdom that was harvested from the room. And what we quickly realized was, although people had kind of different ways of messaging it, and some people were thinking sort of near-term tangible, and others were thinking sort of large-term and big, everyone was kind of pointing in the same direction. There was a strong sense that there is a higher potential to the engineering profession to contribute, and that it is urgent and important to unlock it. And the why answers that we were hearing sort of ranged from, to ensure Canada's competitiveness going forward, tackling the big challenges of the 21st century, many of which or most of which have a significant engineering component. Or some people went really kind of future, long-term thinking, and we're talking about ensuring that we're moving towards a world that works for everybody. And so what we sort of realized was that it didn't actually feel important to all be on the exact same page of how we thought about this, because we were all pointed in the general same direction, and there was a consensus that there was an urgency importance and that we needed to do something about it. So that was a very sort of positive and exciting kind of conversation. And then we started saying, okay, well, if we agree that there's an urgency and importance to unlocking the higher potential of the engineering community, what's holding that back currently? And again, the participants were very quickly able to kind of map out the terrain of some of the symptoms of the challenges of that unrealized potential. So people talked about, Canada's poor record of innovation compared to its peer group. So, Canada being ranked 13th out of 16th on one OECD ranking of kind of peers in terms of innovation. People talked about lack of diversity and how that's been stuck for decades, gender diversity, but also forms of diversity, and a real sense of stuckedness in terms of that issue. People talked about failures of ethics and professionalism. This was, people would reference Charbonneau, or they would reference instances of engineering students behaving badly on campus and kind of giving engineering a bad name. People talked about exclusion of non-licensed engineers from the profession. They talked about change within the academic setting and how we're kind of updating the curriculum for the 21st century. They talked about tendencies towards sort of siloing and commoditization of engineering work. Not an exhaustive list, but the group was actually able to quite quickly kind of map out this range of symptoms. And so coming out of that first workshop, there was a really just strong sense that it wasn't just Engineers Without Borders and Engineers Canada, the two original conveners of the lab, that shared this belief of the urgency and importance to unlock the higher potential of the profession. There's actually a broad consensus amongst organizations across the profession and leaders within them. And thus, the Engineering Change Lab was launched.